Welcome to Websites for Beginners with JP. If you just woke up, get yourself a cup of coffee, relax. If you just came back from work, well, time to relax. And if you haven't done anything today, shame on you. We're going to look in this episode number 6 at color overlays, something that we apply quite often to images within web pages, why we do it, and then also how you can do it outside of a web page builder. Let's first look at why do we apply color overlays, and here is a classic example of why we do it. You may not even know why it's being done. So let's look at the text over here, and you see the text is white. Then my question to you is, do you see anything in the image that is exactly the same bright white that you see in the text? And the answer, of course, is no, and that is the reason. You can imagine you have a wall here, you have clouds there. Clouds are white. They should be a very, very big white. Let's get rid of that. They should be a very bright white. The reason we don't see that white is because there is an overlay, a tint applied here. So it makes everything in the image a little bit more muted and shaded. It makes it darker. This helps us with contrast. And that's probably the number one reason we use overlays on images in websites, because we want to put text or other content over it, and we need that contrast. Here's another example. Same thing. You see a wall here in the background. That wall should be white. Well, it's a little bit dirty, but it should be white. Again, you want the contrast. You still want the image to come through and be visible, but at the same time, you want that contrast so that you can use this very thin font face and then use it in white, and it can still stand out. Imagine for a moment we didn't apply that dark overlay. You won't be able to see this heading that clearly. One more example. Again, we are in an interior area. This is very common when we are working with walls, because walls are most of the time white and we cannot apply the white lettering. So what we do, we apply that color overlay, we get the contrast, we mute the background with the tint, and it's easier for us to see the heading. So number one, we want to apply overlay to create contrast so that we can see our text elements better. But we use color overlays for a few other things as well. I'll go quickly through the others, but in this video, we're only going to focus on this tint that we want to create. Here is another example, a little extreme to my taste, but it is to fit the website's layout. So if you have this kind of color scheme and you want it to blend in very nicely, you apply this kind of overlay over it, where the overlay is actually more important than the images. I think this one is applied a little too strongly. I would just reduce the opacity another 10% so that we can see the background. You can see the computers and the laptops and the stuff a little bit more clearer. For me, this is a little too strong. But one of the instances where we use an overlay, and that is to complement the theme, the color theme of the rest of the site. Very similar to that is this example. And we will do this in another video, because before we get to this one, we have to learn something else, and that is black and white. This one is purely for effect. It creates a specific look. We have this image in the background that is almost monochromatic. And monochromatic is a very big word for black and white images. By applying this color overlay, which is blue, you create this very industrial kind of feeling. There it says industrial layout. Maybe subconsciously my mind saw the word industrial, and it fits again the rest of the site. Right, so this is the fourth way. You can say this one is for the color theme, and this one is an effect. And then the last one where we apply it is for softening. And softening is often done when we want things to look dreamy, romantic, cuddly, comfy, so you can understand where we want to tune down things a little bit. Just turn it down a notch or two. Here we have yoga. We want people to feel relaxed. So instead of using a harsh image, we set this overlay. Now, I have my doubts over the image. I'm never sure if it's good to have this kind of yoga pose for your hero image, but nevertheless, there it is. And applying this kind of soft, which we often refer to as a matte look, to your images is very good if you want to portray something a little bit more gentle. Here's another example for wedding. Oh, Magnum, you naughty boy. What you have here is not only that there is a soft overlay applied, but the overlay has a tint. If you look again here at the whites, if you compare it to the white here in the letters, it's not 100% white. It's maybe a little bit of a rose or a peach color in there. So you apply that kind of tint just to give it a little softening effect. And then to make it all rosy and moonshine and roses, you add the color like peach or lilac, something very, very, very soft in there to give it that kind of tint. So these are all examples where we use color overlay. We're going to focus on bringing in a tint to give us contrast so that we can see the content better. And I've done that with the image here in the page builder. Visit today for your memories. Oh la la, all these fancy titles. Naturally, you're going to tell me it doesn't look good. I cannot see the letters very clearly. And every time you run into that dilemma, the answer is contrast. You don't have enough contrast between your text and your background. Luckily with this image, you can actually play around, and you can do that by setting the focal point. Let me show you. If I drag it all the way to the bottom and I bring these two people in, I bring in a darker background from the pavement over here, and it reads very well. I don't need to make any changes to that. So it looks pretty good. But let's say you wanted this kind of effect, only the umbrella sticking out, and you want the Louvre more there in context, then you're going to run into a problem. And to do that, within page builders, all of them, you apply an overlay. So let's go to the settings, overlay, and you grab a darker color to give you that. Now by default, this overlay is set at almost 90%. And this is a matter of taste, but also a matter of necessity. In this case, this slider here affects your opacity. So when we talk about a solid color, I'm going to move it all the way to 100%. This is a solid color, which we say the color is, or the image is opaque. Opaque means there is no transparency. So the opposite of transparent is opaque. Opposite of transparency is opacity. When a color is solid like this is an opaque color. There is no transparency applied. The moment I drag the slider down, I apply transparency, I increase the transparency. When I move the slider up, I reduce the transparency or I increase the opacity. Get familiar with these two terms. They're pretty important. You need to understand what is opacity, and then you have to understand that the opposite of opacity is transparency. So here, like I said, it's a matter of taste and a matter of necessity. Necessity is that you can reduce it and up to here, where I'm 23% opacity. And now I can still see very clearly what the text is all about. In other cases, you may want to bring it up quite a bit and focus more on the text and still have the image shine through in the background. So for this effect, where we want that contrast, we apply a dark color like this, and we put the opacity to taste to make sure that our text can contrast nicely and that we can read it very well. Jump over into the WordPress editor and let's create a page. I call it Gut Hero for Gutenberg Hero. And then in the blocks, add block, and you search for cover, C-O-V-E-R, cover. And this is going to give you that effect that we were looking for. So you can do this within Gutenberg. Let's go to our media library. Let's grab our image. And then you see it comes in with the overlay already applied. Currently, it's going to ask me to add some text. So let's just type in here, add some text. And now click on the image. And once you click on the image, you will see here in the options sidebar on the right, you have more control over the image and the overlay. You have the same selector, horizontal position, some limited control in Gutenberg, of course, because we don't have resizing of the image here directly. It's something you will have to go and do before the time and crop it. But you have color overlay here that you can choose from and set it yourself. And then here, your background opacity, again, solid is 100% opacity and all the way to 100% transparency. Let's update and preview how this will display on the front end. So you see it can be done. It's all possible within the WordPress editor as well. These things used to be done in Photoshop. We did not have this control to apply it directly within the editors. But in the last couple of years, all the page builders and now as well Gutenberg, the WordPress editor, they have given us these options to apply these overlays directly. And the number one reason we do so is because we want to flatten the image a little bit, make it darker, bring in that tint so that the text or the content can have a better contrast with the background. Let's go and look quickly at how you will do this in a photo editor like TOPAZ Studio 2. I'm going to open TOPAZ Studio 2. And remember, the link for this is in the description below. Check it out, and if you're interested, these guys have specials 2 or 3 times a year. Watch out for that because it's great specials. I think sometimes up to 40% discount. So keep your eyes on the prize, Bobby, because I believe that there will be specials. We're talking Halloween, we're talking Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and Christmas. Something's going to happen in the next 2 months or so. Let's bring in that image that we have worked with. This one over here, I click and I drag it in. And doing this in TOPAZ Studio, we apply again a filter. And aptly named, the filter is called Color Overlay. You will see it here under Creative, Color Overlay. And when I apply this filter, it's going to bring in a solid color and it's going to apply opacity by default because TOPAZ Studio says, we guess when you want to apply color overlay that you want to have some opacity for it. So I'm going to click on it and you will see it brings it in over here. You will see it's currently set to white. When I click on it, I get my color picker. So let's put it on a darker color. Say OK. And then here, let me see, it is Windows X. Nope, that didn't work. Windows Plus. There we go. Let me show you. There you can see the opacity for this one as well, and we can change the opacity. Right, let's go back. So if I put it at 1, you will see this works in the increment all the way up to 1. It is a solid color. And if I take it all the way down to 0, it is now 100% transparent. It's not opaque at all. Just for interest's sake, if you look here in this box over here, let me do that trick again with the plus. Okay, there we go. If you look here in the box, you will see it is at 0.47. If I take it all the way to the right, it's 1. All the way to the left, it's 0. And this is the setting that is commonly used when we talk about opacity. When we say something is fully opaque, it has a value of 1. And if we say something is fully transparent, you have an opacity value of 0. And then in between, you have the increments that you can work like this. So what we do often to make it just easier, we say 1 equals 100%. So you will see some page builders will use this function by saying opacity is a function of 1. Others will say it's 100%. Did I just freak out your mind? Good, so let's take this one down again. We have a very nice dark overlay. And if you take a little bit more, and again, like I said, sometimes it's a matter of taste. But on the other hand, and this is something important, if you need contrast for an image, make sure you apply rather a little bit more than not enough. If you are working towards contrast, we are not working with effect now or mood. We are purely working with a color overlay that will give you more contrast. We will work with the mood and the feelings in upcoming episodes here on Websites for Beginners. That's it. And then after you've done this, you export the image and you can use it on your page. Many people prefer doing it still this way. They do all their images in photo editors before they take it because that avoids you applying additional settings to your images. This is a preference, again, something you can think of. I hope that gives you a better understanding of what overlays are and not just something that we apply randomly. There is actually madness behind all of that. See you in the next episode here on Better Images.